Don't panic. But depending on when you're seeing this, we are 5 days or less from Christmas. We do not have time to be running all over town looking for supplies. We might not have time to order anything from Amazon. So in this video, I have put together 9 things that you can make with what you have at home: fabric and your sewing machine. No other supplies necessary. These are going to whip up quickly. They're going to be great for stocking stuffers or those last minute gifts, the things you need to check off your list. So let me show you what is going to be in here. They're going to be the full tutorials, so you don't have to run around looking for anything. Just check the description below. It'll show you each project and the time that it starts, so you don't have to watch the entire thing. And as I say that, the first one has a string. But I'm going to guess that to make simple little gift bags, you're going to be able to find something to put in here. You're going to have a piece of string, a piece of ribbon, a shoelace, anything, so that you can make this simple drawstring bag. You can make it in any size, just use the same technique. Next, we have a corner bookmark. This is so fast. You can do it with scraps. When you see the video, it will say interfacing. If you don't have any, do not worry about it. It is going to work great with or without it. It will just be a little less stiff, but again, it will work great. Number 3, a coaster. This is made out of 5 squares of fabric. It will suggest you put fusible fleece inside. If you don't have any, again, don't worry about it. Maybe add a 6th piece of fabric to make it a little bit thicker, but this will work with or without the fusible fleece. Number 4, travel tissue holders. Now, travel tissue packs, they're easy to find. So I decided to put this in here anyway. And the video shows you how to make them like this, or with a more finished boxed corner, which seems to be the favorite of everyone who has answered my question from that video: which do you like better? This is faster. Box is just a little bit fancier. Number 5, an easy reversible wine bag. This is 2 pieces of, let's see. An easy reversible wine bag. Now in the video, I do suggest you tie it at the top with a ribbon, but if you don't have a ribbon, doesn't matter. Look how cute this looks. Just fold it down a little bit, take it, and anyone is going to be happy to get this as a hostess gift, holiday gift, or you can just make it for yourself. Number 6, jumbo crayon roll. And yeah, you are going to need some crayons. Again, easy to find. If you have someone that doesn't need the jumbo crayons, they just need the skinnier ones, you're just going to make your dividers closer together. Same concept, same size, you'll just be able to fit more of the crayons. Number 7, similar to a coaster, this is a mug rug. It's basically an oversized coaster shaped like a mug, hence the name. So now you're going to have room for your cup and a snack. Number 8, this is a roll-up similar to the crayon one, but it is sized for makeup brushes. And then finally, number 9, this one is for the dogs or the cats. This is made out of a square of fabric. It slips over the animal's collar that they already have if you don't want to run out and get a new one. And this is super, super easy to make and one of the favorite tutorials that I have done on YouTube. So those are the 9 projects. Check the link below, and happy sewing and have a very, very Merry Christmas.
In today's episode, we are going to make a really simple drawstring bag. I've tried a couple different techniques, and I'm going to show you what I believe is the fastest and easiest, using 2 pieces of fabric, some ribbon, twine, or whatever, pinking shears, and of course, your sewing machine. Okay, so the first step is to put our fabrics right sides together. And then you're going to take a pen. You can use chalk line, erasable pen, or I'm just going to use a regular ballpoint pen because this is going to be on the inside. You won't see it at all. And we're going to measure down 2 inches from that top edge. And I'm just going to put a little mark, a 1/2 inch in from the side edges, so that we're going to know where to start and stop. I'm going to start with my needle right on that 2-inch mark, and we're going to sew the 3 sides with a 1/2 inch seam. The next step is to prepare the top where we're going to put the cord through, and also use our pinking shears on the side so it isn't going to fray a lot. So the first thing is you're going to take your scissors and you're just going to cut right to these lines, but do not cut the stitching. Do that on either side. And now I'm going to take my handy dandy pinking shears, and I'm just going to cut pretty close to the stitching. I'm going to cut these 3 sides up to that 2-inch point where we cut that. So we're not cutting up here, we're just cutting to there. And I usually just fold that back just to make sure I don't catch it. Funny story, once I was messaging someone about asking if they had pinking shears, and either I typed or it auto-corrected to oinking shears. So from that day forward, I will always laugh and think of pinking shears as oinking shears, and now I wish they came in pink. Now we're going to do a little bit of pressing on these long edges, and I'm just going to use my Cricut mini press because it's such a small section. I don't want to have a bigger iron and have all that heat coming at me. So what you're going to do on all 4 of these little tabs basically is you're going to fold it over and over one more time so that the fold is lined up with your stitch line, and then you're just going to press that. See how that is? And then I'm just going to make the other side even and repeat on the opposite side. While I sew the top one, I'm going to fold the bottom back so that it's going to be out of the way, and I can just lay this flat and do really quickly 4 lines of stitching going straight. So I usually do one side at a time, then I fold this forward, and I know that this is only about a 1/4 inch, so I just stay pretty close to the edge. So we have all 4 of those stitched down. We're going to make the channel for our cord now. So we're going to go back to the iron. Now I'm going to use my Cricut mini press again, and we are going to create the channel for our cord. So first we're going to fold down about a 1/4 inch from the top and press. Then I like to turn it over and then just even it up, just to make sure I'm folding down about the same amount on each side. And then we're going to fold down one more time. This will encapsulate those raw edges. Fold the folded edge down to where we started to do our zigzag stitch and where this ended. Then you're going to repeat this on the other side. And if you want to, you can pin or clip this together. I'm going to use this cute little Riley Blake bird pin because, gosh, it matches this fabric perfectly, just to hold that in place while we go back to the sewing machine. Now we just have 2 more stitching lines to do. We're going to stitch that side closed, that channel closed, and that channel closed. And I'm just going to stitch them like they're 2 separate pieces. I'm going to fold that part back so it doesn't get caught. And then I'm just going to stitch straight about 1/8 of an inch that ironed fold that we did. Okay, one side done. Now we're going to fold that side back. Turn this right side out. Push out those corners. And then all we need to do is put string into this channel. I did find that using 2 strings so that you can pull like this gives you the best closing. I tried to do it with 1 and it didn't close right on the one side. So I recommend you always do 2. And I'm just going to use twine. I kind of like the rustic look, plus it's super cheap. And I usually just do 4 times the width of the project, plus a little bit just in case, you need more for the knots. And then because this is twine, it kind of comes apart when I put the safety pin through it. So I just do a very loose knot because we're going to take that out after we get this wound through. So you're going to put a little safety pin in there. And then it doesn't matter which side you start with the first one, you're going to push that through. And then you're going to put it through the other side as well. And you can take the safety pin off. Take the 2 ends, and I usually just pull to even them out. All right, so that's pretty long. I'm going to knot it about here. I probably could have done closer to 3 times the width. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other string, but this time when we thread it through, we're going to start where this is looped. So you don't start on the same side where it's knotted, or you'll have 2 knots on the same side. So you want to start on the opposite side. So then you just kind of want these to be pretty even. So I usually just pinch them together, figure out about where that knot is. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want them pretty symmetrical. Tie and clip that end.
I'm ready to stop reading, but I need a bookmark. Should I grab a receipt, part of the box from gum, or should I grab this super cute fabric corner bookmark? Obviously, I'm going to go for this. Studies show that people with cute bookmarks read more, retain more, and enjoy their books even more than those who use receipts or trash, basically. Okay, maybe studies don't say that, but I say that. I mean, look at how cute that looks. So I'm going to show you 3 different sizes that you can make, and you can decide which one you like the best. These make a great addition to a gift of a book. It's a super quick and easy thing to sew and sell, and it is just fun to have for yourself. So I'm going to show you 3 different sizes: 3.5-inch square, 3-inch square, and a 2.5-inch square. They are each cut from a square of fabric that is a 1/2 inch larger, so 4-inch, 3.5-inch, and 3-inch. It requires 3 pieces of fabric. 1 piece for the back, 1 piece for this full square where the book's pages are going to go over top, and then 1 that we're going to be folding into a triangle for that top corner. Then you're also going to use a piece of interfacing. I am using this interfacing, fusible interfacing from Heat & Bond, and it's kind of like a paper feel to it. It's just going to give the bookmark a little bit more shape and stability. And this gets cut a 1/2 inch smaller than whichever size square you are starting with. You're going to be turning over the back one, and you will fuse this right into the center. That way you're not going to have this extra paper inside your seam allowance. Your seam allowance will pretty much just go right around that. So those are the pieces that you need. Now these flowers do have a direction. The top is all up here, but they're not super directional, and they're not large icons like some of these are. So you can just cut that however you want, and if you fold it into a triangle and make sure you put it on here where the flowers are facing up, it's going to be beautiful. You just don't want to do it where the flowers look like they're falling down into your book. However, if you like using fabrics with more icons and you want to be more specific, I'm going to teach you how to fussy cut into any of these sizes, or how to fussy cut so that you have exactly what you want on the back of your bookmark. So let's get started. Now these sizes sound well and good, but what do they look like in a book? Let me show you. Back to our Secret Lives of Colors. This is the larger one, which is 3.5 by 3.5, which is pretty big, in my opinion. Then this one is the 3 by 3. And then this one is the 2.5 by 2.5. So you can see they're all going to hold the pages. They're just going to hold a little bit differently. And then if we take them out, I just want to show you, it doesn't really add a lot of bulk. You put a few pages around it, and it's not going to harm your book. Now, this is kind of a medium-sized hardback book, but what if you are just, reading an airport book? So let's grab John Grisham and see what they look like in here. So this is just a more traditional size novel, and that's getting a bit big, in my opinion. The medium one, I'm like Goldilocks in the bookmark. That's that size. And the smaller one. So I think this is my favorite. It works well, and the fact that I have the ruler that is the perfect size to make it makes everything that much easier for me. So I think this is my go-to size, but you can decide which size you like the best. Let me know in the comments what you think you would lean into. Would you be doing the 3.5 inch finished, the 3-inch, or the 2.5 inch finished? Let me know. So we are going to make another corner bookmark just like this. This is the 3-inch size, and we're going to put this little covered bridge here, and we're going to fussy cut so it is centered on the back. So I have a piece of fabric, and fussy cut basically means just to be very deliberate about what part of the fabric you're using. So if you happen to be lucky and you have a ruler, so this square ruler is the exact size that I need. It's 3.5 inch square, and it has this line here so that I can see what is going to be in that top triangle when I fold it in half to make that shape. Now, if I was making a lot of them at once, I would take a piece of painter's tape, or this is washi tape, which is just a very low tack tape, and I would put it on my ruler just past that line. I want to be able to see the line, because then my eye very easily looks in this top corner. It's not going to mess around down here. So just visually makes it a little faster. Then I can just move my ruler around and decide where I want it. So do I want more of this tree, but then I cut off a bit of the bridge? Do I want it here? Anything under the blue won't show, because that is going to be in your seam allowance. Anything inside the blue and to this side of this tape, so in this triangle, is going to show on your corner bookmark. So we could do that. We could do this brown one. We could do this white one. So you can just pick different scenes. We could do trees. The main thing is you have to make sure that the ruler is totally on the fabric. So if we tried to do it down here, it wouldn't work because our fabric ends here, but we need the fabric to go all the way to here. So that's one way if you have the perfect size ruler. If you don't, you can use a bigger ruler and tape off the whole square, but I want to show you what I have created. I'm pretty excited about it. I do talk about fussy cutting a bit because I design a bit of fabric where I like to fussy cut. So I have a tutorial for making these 3-size bookmarks in my Etsy shop. So it's got lots of photos. We'll walk you through all of these steps. And it's also going to have these templates. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut these out. The gray is the 1/4 inch seam. So it's basically what this blue does on the ruler. And then you're going to cut out the dark part so that we have like a little window that we can use to figure out what's what. So I just take these sharp scissors. I love these Fiskars Easy Action. They're really easy on your thumb. That nice point makes it easy to get into the corner and just trim out the dark section. I also added the size, like the size fabric, and then the size bookmark that you will make on each of these templates so that you don't have to scratch your head if you use them and then you come back another time and want to make more. Just make sure you're not using fabric scissors for this, obviously. Paper scissors, everyone, paper scissors. So that's how you make your template. So this one is the same size as the ruler. We can use this to do the same thing, right? So you're not going to see what's down here, but it's really easy. You don't have to tape or anything. You're just kind of moving the window and seeing exactly what's what and what's going to be where. So let's get a cutting mat. And I'm going to use this rotating one because then we can leave the fabric alone and move the mat and not have to move this quite as much. So this is what we're looking for. We want to have this bridge and a bit of the road in there. And I'm going to take this, I'm just going to butt it up against there and cut. Now, if I was using the ruler, I could just cut around it, but then you end up with some weird lines sometimes. So what you could also do is take 2 rulers, take one that is basically as long or longer than your fabric, butt it up next to it, move that one, and then cut. That makes sure that your scrap that is left has a nice straight cut on it. And then it also has one edge lined up so we can do the rest just moving around. Now, depending on how much you use rotary cutters, you might want to just turn and be going straight on every cut, because sometimes if you do it this way, you might angle a little bit. It takes a little bit of practice. I've even seen people that can do 1, 2, 3. I cannot go this way, and I can't really go this way very easily. It's faster for me to turn it. So rotary cutting around something is a skill that takes practice like most things. So now we have this ready and we have our perfect corner. So now let's get this part. And I'm going to fussy cut this too. You don't have to. This is where your book pages are going to go. But if you have it on the table while you're reading, it looks cute to have the cute little covered bridge there opposite that one. And then we're just going to do the same thing. We're just going to move it around, but this time we're looking at the bottom left triangle instead of the upper right. So you can do it with the ruler or you can use the piece of paper. So just turn it and then you can just see what is going to be where. So now we have the corner and the bottom. And now we need to fussy cut the back. And this is just going to be the full square. So if we were using this, you can't really see through part of it. I guess you could print it again and cut that corner out so then you have the full square if you think you're going to be doing a lot of fussy cutting like this. But I usually just do this and then I like peek and make sure that all looks good. Now, if you were sewing and selling these, this obviously takes a bit longer than if you used a fabric more like the flowers, where you can just cut, and cut without having to pay attention to what is going on. You might sell it a little faster if somebody really likes what you've put up here. I'm not sure how much more money you would get for it, versus something that is random. I'm not sure how much more value someone's going to see with this than with this, but I don't know, you could give it a try. And then I have a 3-inch square of the interfacing. So we have our back, our inside, our triangle, and our interfacing. And now let's go to the ironing board. So here are our 3 pieces. This is the back. So I'm going to turn that over. I'm going to put my interfacing, making sure the shiny side is down because we want it to adhere to the fabric and not to our iron. Going to follow manufacturer's instructions and just adhere that. Now we're going to take this one and we are going to just fold it corner to corner to make a triangle and press. This is going to be our front. This is our back. And I'm going to grab 3 clips. And the way I clip is very important too, because it helps me when I'm sewing, especially if I'm making a lot of these. You don't want to have to be checking and making sure you like where you're starting and stopping. So I have a system for how I do this. Ask my husband, I have systems for almost everything. So I'm going to put the front base fabric down. Then I'm going to put the triangle. I always like my triangle in the upper right. Then I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it so they are right sides together. Because these are directional, I want to make sure they're the same direction. I don't want this to be sideways or upside down. If you're using non-directional, doesn't matter at all. So I have all these edges lined up, and now I'm going to do 3 clips. The top of the triangle and the 2 sides. So I like to leave my opening at the bottom of my bookmark. I would either do it here or here. You definitely want it to be on this individual place and not on the triangle. So by putting my clips there, I know that I'm going to start here, go all the way around and stop here, leaving as much of this as possible open for turning. The smaller ones, the harder it is to turn. So now we just need to go to the sewing machine. I'm going to just use gray thread. I could use white with this one, but I made a bunch earlier and I found just using gray, kind of neutral, I didn't have to change my thread as much. So we're gonna sew around. And you'll notice I'm pretty much at the edge of that interfacing when I need to turn. And if I'm slow enough to stop a little bit short, I'll lift my foot, turn it 45 degrees and take 1 stitch, and then lift and turn. That is a way to make it so that your corners are going to be a little bit sharper. So it's a good habit to get into. You really do need to leave quite a bit of space on these 2 smaller sizes so that you can turn it right side out. Now, before we do the turning and the pressing, we need to clip these corners. And I like to clip from both sides. Make sure you don't clip where you have the opening because you're going to need that fabric to fold under so that we can get this closed nice and secure. Now I'm going to turn this right side out. Now I want to show you one thing that sometimes makes me panic when I'm turning things right side out. You remember this is going to be on the front, but sometimes when you turn it right side out, your triangle ends up in front of the back. So if it's on the upper left and it's not fussy cut like you wanted, don't panic, just flip it. It's just flipped in the wrong direction. Then I'm going to take a turning tool and I'm going to gently push at these corners. If you push too hard, you're going to end up with threads coming through because you're going to push through that fabric a little bit. So sometimes I like to squeeze it along the seams too. Helps get a little bit of a better corner. Then our opening, we just need to get those threads inside. And I'm going to line that up with my fingers first. And then we're going to press. I want it nice and flat, so I press it pretty well. And then I'm going to use my tailor's clapper. The quilter's clapper is their shorter one. Riley Blake calls the longer one the tailor's clapper. It's basically the same type of piece of wood, just a different length. But what it does is it helps to really flatten those seams, and it also takes some of the heat out so that it's not as hot to the touch. So now it is pressed, and all we need to do is sew all the way around the edge, and it's done. So if you want to sew and sell, or you like giving books like to grandchildren or friends, your book club, this is a great and easy little gift to whip up. Now that we have this pressed and we have it sewn and flipped, this is getting a little bit thick. So I'm going to use these little folded pieces of fabric It was basically, I think, a 4 or 5 inch square. I folded it in half, zigzagged the edge to make these little pockets. I use it to hang quilts up. But I also use it to help even things up. If I didn't use it, we'd have that much space between this and my needle plate. But if I bump that up against it, it's now even. So it gives your presser foot and your feed dogs something to work with to get going. So it's a little bit easier on your machine, and it's going to make it so it doesn't kind of stall out on you. So now I'm just going to sew close to the edge all the way around. I like to start on this corner, this opposite corner, and sew all the way around. I don't want to be starting or stopping on the pretty corner of the bookmark, and it's a little more awkward to start over here. I'm also going to pull up my bobbin thread. So I put my presser foot down, put my needle down, needle up. By pulling up the bobbin thread, you're going to make sure you don't have a weird knot from your machine mistakenly and rudely pulling your thread underneath. So you're going to grab both. You're going to hold them back while you get started. So just take a few stitches forward and then back to secure the thread, and then you're just going to keep going. Now, as I sew, each time I turn, I'm going to put this back behind here just to keep things a bit evened up. Now with another one, I did try just sewing this part and leaving this top corner unsewn. It gives a little bit of a different look, but I didn't like it as much because it made this whole thing like a little bit puffier in the book. So I'm a fan of doing the entire circle, but take a look and let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments if you like it better when you just sew the bottom closed and up this side and leave the corner that goes over the pages unsewn, or if you like it just sewn all the way around. Then you're just going to trim the thread and it's ready for a book. All right, so what do you think? Are you going to take a stab at some corner bookmarks? Let me know in the comments which size you like. And I am going to get back to The Secret Lives of Color. It is a lot more interesting than you might think. So I'm going to drop a link to this book. If you like to learn about color and some fascinating little stories, you might love this book, or it might be one that you want to gift to someone in your life. Happy sewing and happy reading.
Ready for a quick project that'll get that fabric stash down? We're going to make coasters today. My name is Tara Reed. I'm an artist and a fabric designer with Riley Blake, and I am going to show you how quickly these little coasters sew up from 5 squares of fabric and a little bit of fleece. Let's get started. Making these coasters is so easy, and the first step is to iron a few things. So these are going to be the 4 prints. We're going to use the burgundy one twice that will be on the front. So here's an idea of 1, 2, 3, 4. This one used the cream twice, and then 1 fabric on the back. So the brown is going to be the back. So we're going to fuse the fleece onto there. It's 1/4 inch shorter on each side. You want to make sure the gritty part, which is the fusible material, is on the wrong side of your back fabric. And then you're just going to follow the manufacturer's instructions. I'm using a Pellon fusible fleece, so no steam, just press down for about 10 seconds. So we have that attached. We're going to set that aside. Now we're going to take each of these prints that will be on the front, that'll be kind of woven together, and I'm just spraying it, misting it with water instead of using a steam setting on my iron. Now we have our 4 pieces. We're going to turn the back right side up and put it down on your workspace. And then I'm going to use this again just to show you. Now, if you're using 2 prints, because I'm using 3 prints from one of my collections, this is a September leaf toss from my monthly placemat panels from Riley Blake Design. So I'm using 2 of them twice instead of using 4 different prints, because that's what I want to do. So if you're using 2 that are the same, you want to use them alternately. So the first one you put down and the third one, or the second and the fourth one. So when you're placing these on top of the backing, you want to make sure your raw edges are on the outside. The folded edge is going towards the center. So you're just going to line them up around the square. And so you'll notice I have the same print matching, so it's going to be this corner and this corner. Now, when you go to put your 4th one, you're going to take the first one and you're going to fold it down. And then you're going to place the fourth one and then fold this back up. And that is how you get it to weave together so that you're seeing one quadrant for each of the four. Now I'm going to grab some fabric clips and I'm just going to clip this whole thing together. And I like to clip right at where they all come together on these four sides. And then if you want to, you could clip kind of where you turn, but I find that this works really well. Now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine. We're going to sew all the way around, and there is no need to leave an opening for turning because we're going to turn through these folds. So, fun fact, I thought I videotaped the sewing and the clipping and explaining of all this, but I took one photograph. Anyway, you can see that I sewed all the way around the coaster with a 1/4 inch seam, and then I clipped the corners. Now, what I wanted to tell you, and thought I told you, was instead of clipping just straight at the corner, clip twice so that you're removing a bit more of that fabric, because these corners are going to have a bit in them anyway between the folded over fabric, 2 layers, the backing, and a little bit of the fleece. So you want to clip that really well. Now to turn it right side out, you simply put your fingers, get this open to the fold to grab at the back. Using your fingers, you're going to turn this right side out and get those corners pushed out as much as possible. And then if you need to, just grab like a turning tool and then you can kind of push those corners out even better. Just do it slowly and gently because you don't want to push so hard that you push through the fabric and ruin your corner. Now, another thing, if you're going to use a turning tool, is make sure you also put that through all of the layers so that you're going against that fleece and not kind of in between 2 layers, because you're not going to get all the pieces of that corner. And that's it. Now I'm just going to press it so that it's nice and smooth. Some people will stitch all the way around again, but I just like the look of it where it looks like it's just fabric woven together. If you keep tissues on you, would you rather carry this pack or this pack? I'm going to guess that if you sew, you're going to want the prettier one made out of fabric. And all it takes is 2 scraps of fabric to make this beautiful tissue holder with a cute little trim. So I'm going to show you how to do it. But there's one option that you have in making this. So these are made from the same size fabric. This one, I didn't make little box corners, so it sticks out a little bit more. This one, I added that boxed corner, so it's a little bit more finished and polished, but it does take a little bit more time. So if you're making a lot of them for stocking stuffers, teacher gifts, etc., and you just want to crank them out, I would go with this way, because if people don't see this, they're not going to know. Or if you just really want to add that extra touch, I'm going to show you how to do that too. Let's get started. The first thing we need are 2 pieces of fabric. They are both 5.5 inches high with a 1 inch difference in the width. 6.5 inches wide and 7.5 inches wide. The wider one is going to be the lining. So you need a little bit extra to do the lining and this super cute little trim. So just remember, whatever you want to be the main print of your tissue cover is the smaller piece. And then whatever you want to have on the inside and this trim accent piece is going to be the larger piece. Then we're simply going to line up one of these edges. We're going to sew straight down there. It's going to buckle a little bit because, again, they're not the same length. We're going to sew that other side as well. All right, once you have that sewn together, you'll see this part's straight. This has got a little loop, so it's almost like a little cave. We are going to turn it right side out. And I don't press the seams open. I just kind of make sure they kind of fold in the same direction all along the seam, usually towards the smaller fabric. And you're just going to get it flattened and kind of adjust it left and right so that these 2 sides are going to be even, because that is going to be the accent. We're basically making the opposite of this one. So this is going to be our main fabric we'll see, and this is going to be the lining. Once you get that done, you're just going to give it a little press. The next step is we are going to fold it so that they meet right in the center. And you can really eyeball that if you want to measure it. You can mark the center, but I have found that just folding these in, you can really get a good feel for it without that extra step. Then I just finger press this. I'm going to grab a pin and I'm going to pin each side just to make sure that it is staying.
And now we're going to take that back to the sewing machine. Let's get these 2 seams sewn just with a straight stitch, 1/4 of an inch from the edge, and I'm going to double back where they meet because that is going to be your stress point for your tissue pack as you're putting full packs of tissues in and out of this holder. And now I'm just going to repeat on the other side. So I took my scissors and I trimmed that so there's not a bunch of threads. And now we are going to put it down and do a zigzag stitch. I have mine set at 4.4 wide and about a 1.5 stitch length because we're not doing applique, we're just edging this seam. Now, I'm also going to grab a little piece of fabric because sometimes when you want to start right on the edge and you have like a couple layers, sometimes it kind of gets stuck. So I have found that putting another piece of fabric, so I'm going to butt that right up next to it, and I'm going to put that under my foot so that those feed dogs have something to grab onto that isn't part of what we're doing, but it's going to help everything move a little bit more smoothly. I think they call it a guide fabric. There's some term for it, but I can't remember exactly what it is. Look right here, I'll look it up and I'll put it on the video. Let's do a little ziggy-zaggy. That little piece of fabric worked great. You'll see it did not end up attached to the tissue at all. We have a beautiful zigzag that's going to help with any fraying. Just going to cut those threads off, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So this can be done. We can just turn it right side out, push those corners out, and we can have a great tissue cover. But I'm going to show you the next step if you want to make the boxed corners like the original one that I showed you. So to do this boxed corner, we are going to pull this fabric out and make a triangle here. And then I'm just going to take a ruler and I'm going to mark 3/8 of an inch, just draw a line, 3/8 of an inch from the point. And I'm going to sew on that, and I'm going to do that for all 4 corners. Make sure you switch back to a straight stitch to do these box corners. And on each side, just make sure you have this seam folding the same direction so that that lays nice and flat instead of having it go like that and then you have this twist in there. So you'll see this takes a little bit longer because you're having to fold, mark, and stitch each of these corners. But as I said, it does give a little bit more finished look to it. So for something a little fancier, like a wedding, I would definitely take the time. But if I decided I wanted to make like 40 of these, I would probably not take the time. So now I have one with the box pleats that I just showed you, and then I also did another one that is plain. So let's get some tissues into these. Now, if you're using them for yourself, I would recommend, how I like to do it, is I just take all of the tissues out of the plastic, and then I put them in the cover. But let me show you, there is a right and a wrong side to the pile of tissues. So this one has both sides are folded. So that's the bottom. You want to make sure the one where the tissue is going to pop up is on top when you put them in your holder. So then I just put the one side in. This does fit nice and snug. It seems like it might not fit at first, but once you get it in there and smooth it out, it's perfect. Then I get the other side in. Like I said, just kind of adjust that a teeny bit. And look at how great that looks. You're not seeing any of the plastic there. So again, this is what I do if I'm using them for myself. But if you're going to be giving these to somebody or selling them, I would just leave them in the plastic and put the plastic in. And then the same way, but just keeping the plastic on. So now we have that, and then the people can pull it out. But you'll see, you can kind of see that color in the UPC code. So I don't love it as much, but again, for others, you want to do that. So now tell me which you prefer. Are you team, let's get it done fast and just have these edges a little bit pointy? Or are you, nope, I wanted a little more professional look and I'm going to take the time to do those box corners? Drop me a comment and let me know because I'm very curious which team will win. Who's ready for the holidays, for hostess gifts? Who is ready for a glass of wine? I got my hair up. I am ready to work. Let's make some wine bags. In today's episode, I'm going to show you a simple way to make reversible wine bags so you can have either side out. No circles. We're going to do box bottoms. We're going to tie it with a bow, and it's going to fit either one of these size
wine bottles. I love that they're reversible. You can pick 2 different fabrics. You want to make sure the fabrics coordinate because you will see that inside fabric a little bit when you have it wrapped around your wine bottle. These wine bottle bags are going to have a box bottom, so no circle cutting. It's going to be nice and simple. So let's get started. You're going to need 2 pieces of fabric, 12 inches wide, 16 inches high. If you're using a directional fabric, make sure you're paying attention and that you have the direction going on the 16-inch. And then when you go to sew it together, make sure you're paying attention to which side has the top of your pattern. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to fold this in half, and then you're going to clip or pin, and we're going to sew down one long side and across the bottom. Again, making sure you're paying attention if your fabric is directional, that you leave the top open because nobody wants a wine bag where everything on the fabric is upside down. Now you're just going to press the seams open on the long end of both pieces of fabric. You don't need to go all the way down because we will be trimming off that point. And while you're at your ironing board, take it and fold down the top edge 1/2 inch. And this doesn't have to be super exact. You just want to make sure both halves are pretty consistent. And you're going to press that as well. This way we can get all of our ironing done at once. Now we're going to make our box bottoms, and I love using this 1.5 inch wide Cute Cuts ruler because that is exactly how far from the tip that we are going to mark our sewing line. But first we need to get it all lined up. Now I've made quite a few of these wine bags, and I have created a system that makes it go quickly and evenly. So what you're going to do is you're going to line up this seam line on one of your grid lines of your cutting mat. So you have the seam line up here, and then you have the point where it seamed right there. So we have both of those on that 10-inch mark. Doesn't matter which mark, just put it on a mark. Then you're going to flatten the bottom. So see how it creates that square, and you're going to make sure that that stitch line is lining up here, the stitch line here, to that seam line there. And then also making sure that, that everything just stays straight on that line. Sometimes you need to adjust it because sometimes you'll put it down and it'll be like a little bit wider here and there. And so I have found this is the quickest and easiest way to get this done. And I am all about getting projects done quickly whenever possible. So now we're going to take our 1.5 inch ruler, or just whatever ruler you have, and you're going to measure 1.5 inches from the tip to where we're going to sew. And then I'm just going to mark this. I'm just using a regular pen because this is going to be totally inside, encapsulated, so you'll never see that pen mark again. Then I'm going to put a little pin in that. Cute little Riley Blake pin, I love it. Now I'm going to grab this without moving it. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to put that down because we already have that all lined up nicely. And we're going to mark from the other side. Now you're just going to repeat with the other half of your wine bag. Now we're just going to sew along all 4 of those lines. And this is definitely an area where you can daisy chain them, meaning you don't have to take them totally off, just sew one to the other. And if you're doing a lot of wine bags, this really does save you some time and thread. So are wine bags something you'd like to see more of? Would you like to see how to do them with a drawstring inside? A little bit more complicated? Leave me a note in the comments and let me know if that's something that's of interest. Now the next thing you're going to do is you're going to trim 1/4 inch from that line. You can use your rotary cutter, but I'm just going to do this with scissors so I don't have to keep moving my cameras all over my room. Now the next step is to get these wrong sides together. So you're going to take one and turn it right side out. It does not matter at all which one because these wine bags will be reversible. So you don't have to make any decisions yet about which side you want out. Then we're going to put one bag inside the other and we're going to match these seams. You don't really have to worry too much down here. The main thing is to get these seams matched at the top. So the seam line and the fold, and then I'm just going to put a little clip there. And then we're just lining up this top edge. Because this is reversible and because whoever wants a snarl of a knot in their thread, I'm going to be pulling up my bobbin thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my foot down, put my needle down, holding this thread, the top thread, and then I'm going to pick the needle up and I'm going to give it a little tug, and I'm going to grab that bobbin thread. So now I'm holding on to both the top and the bobbin, and I'm going to put it under that foot, and I'm going to hold on to that, and I'm going to do a little knot. Now we're going to stitch all the way around, and I usually hold on to that thread until I've taken maybe 2 stitches just to make sure it doesn't get sucked back down under by some gremlin in the sewing machine. And now I'm just going to top stitch all the way around. And now that your wine bag is done, you just have to decide which side you want to be on the outside. So let's just flip this. Put the red on the outside. I think that's just going to be beautiful for fall, for a fall hostess gift, for Thanksgiving. Put that wine in there, and then I just cut a piece of 1-inch ribbon. You can use anything. I'm just going to tie it right there. And now it is ready to go.
In this video, I am going to show you how to make a roll-up holder that just rolls like this and holds with an elastic strap for a pack of 8 jumbo crayons. Each crayon has its own little pocket, and it is the perfect holder for home, for storage, for the car, for travel, wherever your little one wants to take these big crayons and get creative. I'm also going to show you how to do it with directional fabric. We all know that toddlers in particular often really love things that have those characters on them. Now, it's much easier, I will say, to do a roll-up with non-directional fabric. This is made out of one piece of fabric. It is folded, sewn together, rolled up, because nothing matters as far as the direction goes. Now, with directional fabric, that becomes a problem. I made this one like it was non-directional fabric. So I cut one piece of fabric, I folded this up, and I made the pockets, and look what happened. The designs on the pocket are upside down, total bummer. Right side up here, right side up above the crayons, but the pockets upside down. That doesn't thrill me. So today I'm going to show you, instead of using one piece of fabric, you're going to use 3 pieces of fabric, but then everything is right side up. And then I chose to use just an accent fabric because I ran out of this. I just hit my scrap bin and found something that is absolutely perfect to coordinate with this fabric. Before we get started, I'm going to share something important with you. What is really, really important for you to know and understand is this. Let's look at the legal warning here. And this may be an unpopular opinion among many people because I definitely see this heatedly debated on social media, but here's the legality of it. And I'm not a lawyer, but I have licensed my art for over 21 years, so I do understand copyrights and how this works. Always defer to the selvage. Don't believe what a girl on Facebook tells you and says, no, it's fine if you're selling less than 50 or however many, you can totally sell it. No, you cannot. This says, sold for non-commercial, home use only. That means if I make these, I cannot sell them. No money can be exchanged. I can show you how to make them. I can give this to my nephew, my great nephew, as a gift, but I cannot make these, sell these on Etsy, sell these at craft fairs, etc., etc. Now, does that mean people don't do it? Does that mean a lot of them don't get caught? But if they get caught, I can guarantee you that Paw Patrol Company has a lot more money for lawyers than you do. So it's bad karma, and it is just too much of a risk, in my opinion, to take. Now, with that caveat out of the way, let's take a look at the supplies that we need. In addition to the fabric, this is what I'm going to be using today. We obviously need the crayons. You're going to need some way to mark those intervals that you will be stitching to make the pockets. You can use a heat erasable pen or pencil and a ruler. You can use painter's tape, or I am going to be using my sewing machine's seam guide, and I will show you how that works. This is especially helpful if you're going to be making a bunch of them because you just put it in your sewing machine, set it up, and it is good to go for as many intervals as you want. Some clips, quilter's clapper, rotary cutter, and I'm also going to be using a hot ruler. This and this, totally optional, but I love them both, and I think they make things go faster and smoother. A hot ruler, it's like this flexible, kind of fuzzy feeling ruler. You can iron right on it. Now, let's get to the fabric. So just to review, if this was non-directional or I didn't care if half of it was upside down on the pocket, I would just use 2 pieces of fabric cut to the same size. But because I want everything right side up, we're going to be using 3 pieces of fabric. This is going to be the inside. This fabric is going to be where this green is. So it's on the inside of the pocket. I'm going to sew these two fabrics together so that they're the same size as this one, but so that when we fold it up, the pocket fabric will be right side up like it is on this roll up instead of upside down like it is on this one. I had a decision to make. I could have used this for the inside and these two for the outside, so it would have been more similar to this, but I know this kid loves Paw Patrol and he would rather see as many Paw Patrol characters than green, so we're going to go with all three pieces like this. So our inside fabric is cut to 11 inches by 10 inches high. The outside fabric is cut to 11 inches by 6.5 inches, and this is our pocket fabric. And this one is cut to 11 inches by 4.5 inches. The first thing we need to do is we need to put these two together and sew them together. Here's the key to getting everything right side up. These need to be reverse. So this is right side up, this is upside down. Put them together, add some clips, and sew along here with a 1/4 inch seam. I grabbed a piece of scrap fabric that I'm going to be using a lot for this project, and it is called a leader fabric because it leads your sewing. What you do is you put it on top of your feed dogs and you start sewing on this scrap fabric. Leave a little bit of space before you go on to your project and then sew to your project. That way, if there's any bird's nests or anything, they're going to be back on this leader fabric and you don't have to take the time to pull up your bobbin thread. The main thing to remember is that when you get to your project, just go a few stitches, then go backwards and forwards to lock the stitches on your project. Now that we have sewn these two pieces together, I'm going to set my seam. This is something very commonly done in quilting. And what it means is you just iron over your stitch line before you fold anything back. And then I come back and I press with my clapper. If you're not familiar with this, it's a piece of unfinished wood. It absorbs the heat and it helps to press any air or wiggle in the fabric. So this is nice and flat. Taking the seconds to do that whenever you are sewing makes your end result just that much more professional. Now I'm just going to push this forward and we are going to iron that down and press that again, gets the heat out and really sets that press. The next step is to put these together, right sides together, and sew. But you'll notice the one where we put two pieces together is a little bit longer, and that's actually on purpose. I didn't want it to be short if somehow your seam was a little bit more than a 1/4 inch. So I added this little step where you're just going to line this up, lining it up with the bottom 4.5 inch section, and then just turn it and trim that edge to match. It's basically a 1/2 inch if your seams are perfect, but cutting that off and having it correct is better than having it too short. If you have lefties like my dad in your family and you want to be able to say, and I made it for you because you're left-handed, here's what you're going to do. You're going to put these together. If you want it to be left-handed, leave the left side open, sew these three sides. If you want it to be right-handed, you're going to leave the right side open, sew these three sides. We're going to make it right-handed because pretty sure I'm just going to put a few clips to keep this lined up and also remind me which of the three sides I'm going to be sewing. Then we're going to go and sew these with a 1/4 inch seam. Our next step is to clip these corners without clipping the stitching. And I like to do it in 2 steps, cutting at a deeper angle than you would get if you just cut straight across. That will have less fabric that needs to get folded in there and give you a better corner when you turn it right side out. The next step, you have a decision to make, and I'm going to show you my current favorite way. When we turn this right side out and to make our holder, we're going to have to turn this raw edge in, so it'll go inside when it's right side out, a 1/4 inch, which most people turn it right side out and then fold that in and press. I currently like to press before turning it right side out because I can see that I'm doing it straight. You can just eyeball it like that, or you can use your hot ruler, put it there, and then make sure that that edge is folded over right to that first line, which is a 1/4 inch, and press. Don't go all the way to the end because that's folded. So I usually go about 1 inch from the end, Get that pressed. Then I turn it over and I do the same thing on this side. Keep the other side folded under as you're doing this. Or on the second side, you can just eyeball it and make it line up with the first side. But now you have these two ends to deal with. So what I do is I just open it up a little bit. And then I just fold that down so that it is even with the two sides where it was already pressed. Let me know in the comments if you've tried this, if you're going to try it, if you just prefer the other way, or if you have other little tricks. This part's just always a teeny bit of work no matter how you do it. Okay, so we have that done. Now we're going to turn it right side out, getting those corners pushed out. And if they're not pushing out well enough with your fingers, grab a turning tool or even a chopstick. And you just, whatever you use, you want to push very gently and just push that out as well as you can. And then we just need to get this pressed nice and flat with these seams out. You don't want it tucked in like that and folded at all. So just take a minute. I usually just kind of roll my fingers to make sure that's out. And I do one side at a time. Make sure this stays folded under as you are pressing this. You can use your clapper if you want to. You don't have to. So I got that one side done. This is the folded side. This is the tucked under side. So I'm going to do the other sewn side. And then I'm going to just push out to flatten that fold so everything is nice and flat. So this is the inside. This is the outside with the two pieces. This one, the top's here. This one, the top's here. So now comes the magic. What you're going to do is you're going to make sure this stays tucked in. And then you're going to fold this up at that seam line, which is basically folding it up 4 inches. Now, if you want to use the hot ruler just to make sure you get it turned nice and straight, this is more important, honestly, when you're doing non-directional fabric, but I sometimes use it with the directional as well. I make sure this is lined up on the edge. And I just kind of move it and make sure that seam line is right on the edge of my ruler. Everything's lining up. And then you can just press right over that ruler. Then because there's a slight thickness to that, I usually take it off, press it one last quick time, and then hit it with the clapper. We have the left side open. This is the folded side, and this is folded up. Now what we need to do is we need to make our pockets for our crayons and add our elastic loop. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to sew about 1/8 of an inch, slightly less than 1/4 inch on the folded side. And I like to go all the way from the bottom to the top, just so it's going to be even and kind of hold this top part together when we get here. So let's head back to the sewing machine. When I can, I just pull the threads out of the leader fabric so they don't get in my way. Now I'm going to be sewing down this side. And this is basically the first stitch to hold this pocket together and establish the first seam of which we're going to measure all of the pocket stitching off of. Now you need to decide how you want to draw your lines or add your guidelines for sewing each of the pockets for the crayons. This is 1-inch painter's tape, which is perfect for regular size crayons. But jumbo crayons, we need 1 1/4 inches in between the stitch line. So what you can do if you want to use the painter's tape is pull a piece off, put it right on that stitch line. You want to make sure it doesn't go off of your fabric like that, because then it will stick to your sewing machine and things won't move smoothly. So make sure painter's tape is always on your fabric if you use it. And now we are just going to sew 1/4 inch beyond that tape. I'm going to be pulling up my bobbin thread so that I can start on this side. So put my foot down, put my needle down, holding my thread, pick it up, give it a little tug, grab the bobbin thread, put them both under the needle, go forward a few stitches, still holding these threads, backwards a few stitches, and then keep going. So now with the 1-inch tape and the 1/4 inch beyond it, we have the perfect distance for the jumbo crayons. So we can just lift this painter's tape, put it down on this stitch line, and do the same thing. That's one way to go. And honestly, that works pretty easily. We're used to sewing a 1/4 inch from edges, so why not sew a 1/4 inch from tape? You're going to be able to use that for at least one crayon roll up. If you're doing multiple, it might start to lose its stick, but let me know in the comments if you try it for multiple and how many times you can move this and get it to stay in place. The next way would be to take a ruler and use a pencil or a heat erasable pen, put the 1 1/4 line right on that stitch line, draw the line, and just sew on the drawn lines. The third way is to use the seam guide. Most sewing machines, if not all, come with a seam guide. Mine is metal, sometimes they are plastic, but it's basically this piece that's bent at a 90-degree angle, and you can put it into your foot and you can use this as a guide, similar to using the numbers on your needle plate, but this will work as you move across fabric. I use it a lot for straight line machine quilting and also for projects like this. So I am putting it into a walking foot. This is a Janome sewing machine. If you have one of these and want to use it, look at your manual. It'll tell you how to do it on your machine, but this is the basics. So you put it in and you just push it through. It's coming out over here. You just can't see that. And then you're going to line it up for the increment that you need, which is 1 1/4. Now, when this seam guide runs along a stitch line, I know that I will be sewing 1 1/4 inches away on this side. So this is my favorite way of doing it, especially if I'm making a lot. I just set this once and I just keep using it. There's no tape to move. I don't have to draw lines all the time. I just keep rocking and rolling. So if I wanted to start off the end of the fold, I just flipped this to the other side and put it in. So it's basically upside down because this is designed for right-handed sewing, but I can have it so that it is on the left-hand side. It goes on the stitch line, and then I could use the leader fabric. Now, when you get to this last one, depending on how well you press this under and did your seams, I always do a quick size check before doing the second to the last line. Do I actually have 1 1/4 inch if I sew here and then a little bit more than 1 1/4 inch? And I do. So 1 1/4 inch here and a little bit more over here, so that's going to be perfect. You just want to make sure your last spot doesn't get a little bit too small for your jumbo crayon or whatever you're making a roll up for. And if it does, you just scooch that over maybe a teeny bit and it'll be a little bit snugger, but we do not have that problem. So now we have sewn the pockets all the way from this first end to here, and we're not sewing this yet until we put that elastic in. Now for the elastic, for an 8 jumbo crayon roll, you need a 7-inch piece of elastic. You're just going to fold that in half, matching those raw edges. We're going to want to put it in halfway between the bottom and the top of the roll. So I just fold it in half just to get an idea of where that halfway mark is. Right there. So basically at the top of that bone. Now, here's an important part. You don't want to put it in between the 2 layers of the pocket. You want to put it in between the 2 layers of the backing. So the longer fold, not the shorter fold. So I'm just going to lift that up, put that in right at that bone. If it's not quite even, it's totally fine. And I'm putting that in about a little over 1/4 inch. And then I'm just going to clip that in place. Now, because this is pretty thick, because we have all the folded in part, I highly recommend pulling your bobbin thread up. And then I'm going to use this. It's another kind of leader fabric. It's basically a spacer. It's a piece of fabric I've folded and I just use over and over again to kind of get the fabric even. What this does is it helps your machine and your foot and your feed dogs move things when you're starting on the very edge of something rather thick. You basically want to use something that is going to be about the same height as the project you're working on, so your foot stays nice and straight. So I'm putting that back there. We're not going to stitch in that at all, unlike this one. Pull that bobbin thread up. These 2 pieces just push off the back, and we're going to sew about 1/8 of an inch from the edge just to make sure that we catch and close all of that part that we folded under. And then I use my scissors to hold it in place, keeping my fingers well away from that needle. Now to make sure that that stays nice and secure, we're going to backstitch over the elastic and also over the edge of the pocket. Now it is ready to clip all the threads and add the crayons. Now it is all done. Everything is right side up. Oh my gosh, my great nephew is going to love this. So now you're just going to put all the crayons in there. He's probably going to need help getting these crayons back in here, but it is a great way to carry crayons on the go. Slip it in your purse really easily. It doesn't take up a lot of room. You just roll it up like that. Take the elastic, and there you go. So if you don't want your kid to have screen time, just bring some paper, crayons, or a coloring book, and you are ready to go. This is the jumbo crayons. Let me just show you one other thing, and that is jumbo markers. Jumbo markers, or the washable markers, just broad tip markers. The washable ones, just these fatties, right? They are basically the same width as the crayons. So you're going to be sewing an 1.25 inches across for each one, but they're a little bit taller. So the main difference between this and this is the markers come with 10 in a box, so you're going to need your fabric to be a little bit wider, and they're slightly taller than the crayon, so you're going to need your fabric to be slightly taller. So for a non-directional holder like this one, for the broadline, aka fat markers, you're going to need your fabric to be 26 inches wide by 7.5 inches high. Fold it up 4 inches just like we did with this, and sew at 1.5 inch increments. So there you have it. That is how you would do a jumbo crayon 8 set with directional fabric so that everything is in the right direction and not upside down like it is on this one. Be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, share on social media, and if you make any of these and share them, be sure to tag me so I can see what fabric combo you decided to make. Happy sewing. This is a mug. This is a coaster. A coaster is the perfect size for a mug. This is a mug rug, basically the same size as the coaster, but wider, shaped like a rug, hence the name. Mug rugs can come in any size you want. There are no mug rug police. This one is 4.5 by 7 inches. This one is 9 by 6. And this one is even bigger than that, about 9 by 10 or 11 because of the design that I wanted on there. The fastest way to make a mug rug would be to take 2 pieces of fabric, put some fleece or flannel on the inside, sew it together, turn it right side out, and you're done. Look at that. The beauty of a mug rug is there is room for stuff. You could put a cookie there, you could put a little plate with your tea bag, whatever you want. Or you can just put the mug in the middle. It's just a different concept, but basically the same as a coaster. I am going to show you how to make this folded mug rug in the same way that I have shown you how to make these coasters. It just is a little bit more interesting to have 4 different fabrics instead of just having something solid. So what do we need to make this mug rug? We need 5 pieces of fabric. So 7.5 by 5 for all of these pieces. Backing fabric, fleece or batting. Then you need 4 pieces the same size for the top. So I'm going to be using the sunflower, these sunflower tosses, and the honeycombs. These are from my Honey Bees and Sunflowers Please fabric collection from Riley Blake Designs. Most of the work is done at the ironing board, so let's head over there. We have our 5 pieces. If you're using fusible fleece, you're just going to fuse that to the back of your back fabric, which is this one, following the manufacturer's instructions, or you can use batting scraps. It's just something to give it a little bit of padding for your mug rug. Now we are going to take these 4 pieces, and because I'm using 2 directional pieces, it is a teeny tiny bit more complicated than if you had all non-directional prints, but I want to show you how to do this, and then anything else will be even easier. So you'll notice on this one, I made sure the stems were going in the same direction and one wasn't upside down. Well, I guess it really wouldn't matter. It would just look good from both sides. But I'm assuming most people are going to look at this from one direction. Different from the coasters, because the coasters are square, you just folded everything in half and pressed it, easy peasy. For the mug rug, because it is a rectangle, we're going to press 2 of the pieces in half by matching the short ends. Do that. I'm just going to give it a little press with my quilter's clapper just to cool that fabric off and press that seam. Okay, so we have those 2. And then these two are going to be folded by matching the longer ends. We're making longer, skinnier pieces. Now, if you have a clapper and you're doing a lot of pressing and using the clapper a lot at once, you can turn it over every once in a while, just so the heat goes into the opposite side and not always in one side of the wood. So now we have everything folded in half and pressed. Now, one very important thing to note is that the folded edges all need to be on the inside, and the raw edges all need to be what is going to be in the seam allowance when we sew this together. So you want to move them like that now. This one had the raw edges in, so I have all of the folds facing in. Because these are directional and I want to be a little controlling about what is showing, I'm going to be putting this together, and then we will put the backing on top. So this is going to be the top left. This is going to be the bottom left. So I am just matching the raw edges here and the raw edges here. Next, we're going to put the sunflowers up here. So we're going to match these folds and all these raw edges. The fourth one is the one that's slightly trickier because you have to lift one to weave it, because if we do that, we're not going to see this one at all. So what you do is you fold this one back, you put this one in, making sure again that the fold is going to be in the center, and then you simply fold that back. And just do another double check and make sure all the raw edges are lined up and nothing's, kind of off like that. So that looks good. Doing it this way, putting it together before we put the backing, we know exactly what is going to show when we're done. So now we're going to take our backing and we're going to put it right sides together. So the right side of the backing onto the right side of our folded mug rug fabrics and line up all of those edges. Okay, we're going to flip it. So this is what's going to be on the inside, which would also be pretty on the outside, but sometimes you don't know if you're going to get a good piece or not. I'm going to clip or pin, and I make sure that I clip where these folds meet just to keep everything straight and lined up. Now, one thing I love about this project is we're going to sew all the way around. We don't have to leave any space open for turning at all because we are going to be turning through all these folds. Okay, I think that's an adequate amount of clips. We've clipped all of the folded areas. We have it all nice and straight. I usually flip it over again, make sure I have everything caught on the back and I didn't miss any layers. Now we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew all the way around with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You want to make sure that the foot doesn't go up under this fold. So I usually use scissors or a pen or something to hold that down to keep my fingers away from that needle. And as I said, we didn't need to leave anything open for turning. We could just go all the way around and start and stop at the same point. Now we need to clip the corners so that we can get them to turn as well as possible, because there are a lot of layers, 2, 4, 5, plus the fusible fleece. And that is a lot of layers in each of those corners. Now you can just clip the corner at a 45-degree angle to there. That is a very traditional way that people do that. But you're then going to have to fold all of that fabric into that little corner. So you're not going to get as good of a corner as if you taper the corner. I remember the term most people use for that. So I'm starting up here and cutting more of an angle. So you'll see more is cut off here than on this side. The main thing is make sure you do not cut your stitching. You also have to go a lot slower and more gently when you're turning this right side out, because there's very little beyond that stitching, and it will be easier for you to poke whatever you're using to turn out of that stitching or through the fabric. I'm going to trim all 4 corners. Now it is time to turn it right side out. So we have the fleece or batting or whatever you're using for the inside is on the outside right now. This is the inside of the fabric. You're literally just going to put your fingers in the center, and you're going to flip each of these corners right side out. But they're still pretty rounded compared to these. So let's do a better job. I'm going to grab my turning tool. This is got a point, but it's not sharp. You could also use the tip of a pen. If it's not opened, you could use a chopstick. Anything that's a little bit pointy that's going to get into that corner better than your finger. Now, the main thing to remember is you have to have your turning tool going against your filling. So if I were to try and push this corner out and put my turning tool here, between the sunflowers and this fabric, it's not going to turn the whole corner. It's just focusing on these two. I need it in here next to the fleece so that it is actually reaching the two top layers and the bottom layer. And then I'm just going to very slowly and gently, and sometimes I'll squeeze it like that. That helps move along that seam and push that out. You can see it's turned better than these other corners. So I'm just going to repeat that on the 3 other corners. Now, when you're happy with that and feel like you've done the best job that you can without pushing through the fabric or the stitching, you're gonna lay it flat, just kind of move it, get those seams right on the edge, and then you're going to press. So you can be done. Like this one, I just pressed it and it's done. It's a little bit puffier. So for this one, I'm going to show you what stitching around the edge and even doing diagonal line stitching does to the look of the mug rug. So let's head back to the sewing machine. Now for doing top stitching on a project like this, the thread choice is going to impact how your project looks. If you want all of the thread to kind of disappear and not be a visible element of the design, you would use navy blue and then switch to gold. I don't want to have to switch my thread, so I'm just going to do navy all the way around. Now I'm going to go all the way to the corner because I am going to, for whatever reason, sew a diagonal down my coaster so that it should go right through that center. You can draw the line if you want to. I'm going to wing it and see how I do eyeballing it. Fingers crossed. Phew, I did a good job. I hit the center. Now I'm going to do it in the other direction as well. Now I could, again, change the thread color to gold if I didn't want this stitching to show, but I am just going to leave it with the navy blue. So that's it. Now we have 2 mug rugs. They are exactly the same fabrics, exactly the same size, but they look a little bit different because this one has just been sewn together and left a little bit puffier. And this one I stitched around the edge and then also through the center. If you feel like you're going to be putting these through the wash, I would probably recommend at least stitching the outside, if not doing a little decorative stitching on the inside. If you feel like you don't really dirty your coasters very often and you like this look better, you're totally fine. Mug on the mug rug. It looks good on them both. Let's take a look at the supplies. You're going to need an outside fabric, an inside fabric, a piece of fusible fleece, 2 pieces of fabric to make the ties, or 2 pieces of ribbon, rotary cutter, cutting mat, ruler, matching thread, pins or clips, and either a turning tool, or I'm going to show you a trick about how to get really good corners turned without a turning tool and with a piece of thread. So stay tuned for that. The other thing I'm going to show you is 3 different ways to make these ties. One is just with ironing, iron press, iron press, iron press. Another one is using a number 25 bias tape maker. And the third way, which I love, is how to use this fabric tube maker. This is from Clover. It's originally designed for jelly roll rugs, so it is fat enough that you can have fabric and batting go through there, but we're just going to use it for the fabric. So really excited to share that with you as well. Let's get a little bit more specific. For the ties, because I'm going to make them, I have 2 strips that are 2 1/4 inch wide by 19 inches long. Now, if you wanted to use some leftover 2 1/2 inch pre-cuts, you can totally do that. It is just going to make like an 1/8 of an inch difference on how wide your ties are. So no worries at all with that. And then I'm going to be showing you how to do a holder with non-directional fabric. So I'm using a solid on the outside, a print on the inside. There's no up or down. So both of these are 16 inches wide by 18 inches high. Then I'm going to be using fusible fleece. This is cut to 15 3/4 by 13 1/2. Now you can take notes and write this all down, or I also do have a detailed PDF that you can purchase from my Etsy shop. There will be a link on the video and below the video in the description if you want to have that. It will also show you how to make this with directional fabric. The first step is going to be to adhere the fusible fleece to either the outer fabric or the lining. I usually do it to the lining just in case there's ever any little bubbling. So we're going to head to the ironing board and get that done. So now I have my fusible fleece on my ironing station, and I use usually the Pella 987F. Make sure you read the directions. I want an extra strong bond. So what they tell me to do is put my fleece down first and my fabric on top. But I'll flip it before I iron, but I want to make sure I have it in the right position. So I'm taking my lining wrong side up, and then I'm going to put the fusible fleece down. Now, if you put it in the wrong direction, you've got like an inch and a half on each side. That means it's incorrect. You want it to only have about 1/8 of an inch on each side and the top. This bottom part I left without fleece because the first one I made, I felt it was a little bit too bulky having the fleece in the front of the pockets. I thought having it in the back was going to be plenty, so this is how I decided to write this pattern. So now that I have it positioned with the scratchy fusible part on the wrong side of the fabric, I'm going to just very carefully turn it over so that we have the fleece with the fabric on top. Then I'm going to cover it with a pressing cloth. If you've never used one of these before, it's basically a very thin piece of cotton. You can buy it, it's called a pressing cloth, or you can just use a piece of your own thin cotton. So it also says to wet your pressing cloth. I love these little mister bottles. You can get like 2 for about $9 on Amazon. I'll throw a link in the description if you want one of those. I also use them for starch. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to be very patient and press across the entire area where my fleece is. It says to press firmly, about 10 to 15 seconds on each section, making sure you're overlapping. Having this fabric wet also makes it easy to see where you've been because it will dry. And you can kind of pull that up and see if it's connected. The edges are usually your biggest problem. So if your edges are good, you're probably good to go. So now I have my fleece nicely fused onto the back of my lining. So I'm going to set that aside. Now let's look at the 3 ways I promised to show you how to make these ties. First one is just going to be with an iron. So what you're going to do is you're going to put it wrong side up. I'm going to fold down about 1/4 inch on one end and press. I'm also going to be using my clapper for this. It is basically an unfinished piece of hardwood. If you wanted to make your own, you could, but you want hardwood. Nothing that's going to warp when moisture and heat gets in there. And it just helps absorb the heat and really press those seams well. So now we're going to fold these long edges together, wrong sides together, and press. So we're basically folding it in half and pressing the whole length. Then I just run my clapper across that. It'll cool it off. It'll make that a better crease. Next, we're going to open it up. Now we're going to press each of these edges right into that crease that we just made, making sure you don't press out that crease. So you just want to press at an angle from each side. And we're going to go all the way down. So basically, you're making the raw edges meet in the middle. And we can do this just like I'm showing you, just with an iron and pressing the entire length 3 times. Or you can use a bias tape maker, and I'm going to show you how to do that in the next step. But we're going to finish this completely ironed version first. Then the final step is to just refold it on that first fold and press. So this is basically making it 1/4 as wide as the original fabric and getting these raw edges in the center. So we have the one end where we turned it under, so there's no raw edges. This one still has raw edges, but that's fine because it's going to be on the inside of the makeup case. And then I usually just put a couple little clips to keep it folded until I'm ready to take it to the sewing machine. Okay, so that's method 1. All you need is your ironing board. Now, method 2, we're going to use the number 25, which usually is blue, bias tape maker. And this gets us through those first 3 steps in one fell swoop. So what you do is you feed it into the end, making sure it is even. So you want these raw edges going up the side evenly. This strip of fabric is a little big for this, but you can make it work. And I'm going to be using this little awl to help push it through. See, it's flat and it's going up both sides evenly. So now we're good. Now, when it comes out on this side, you want these 2 raw edges to be meeting in the middle. So because we're using a fabric that's a little bit big for this, you don't want to iron right up to the edge. You want to keep it about 1 inch or 2 out. So once you know you have this all lined up and these are in the center, you can put your iron down and then you're just going to pull that back and then just make sure everything is staying lined up as you go. It's a lot faster than ironing the whole thing 3 times. Then you want to open up one end, fold it down 1/4 inch, and then you can usually just fold that back right away. Okay, that looks good. Then I will press that. The bias tape maker gets us to this point. We fold that end under, and then we are going to fold it in half, and we'll be good to go. So I do have a longer video that shows you the 5 main sizes, what size fabric they use, and a little bit more about how to use them. So you'll be able to find the link either above the video or in the video description. So that is tie way number 2. So they look exactly the same. We just got to there in a different way. The next way with the Clover fabric tube maker, we don't even iron until the very end. We're going to get it all folded as we're putting it through the sewing machine and sewing this part closed. So let me show you that magic. Now I want to introduce you to this magical little tool called a fabric tube maker from Clover. So if you've ever seen rugs like this where it's tubes of fabric and they go around and around and they're sewn together, this is a tool that people will use for that. But I found a couple other good uses for it, including making the ties for this makeup bag. So it comes with 4 pieces, 2 that click together for the big part, 2 that click together for the small part. Now it's really important to remember that this is above. I somehow got mine jammed in, but you can see it kind of goes together like a puzzle piece. I will say, I find these a little bit hard to put on and off. So if you have arthritis, this might be a little tricky. This one isn't as bad. Just kind of push your fingers and push forward, and that will come apart. This is the one that really gets me. So what I decided to do was take some flathead pliers and just super, super gently squeeze the side with the pliers to get that squeezed in so that I can push it out. So next, just like with the bias tape maker, you're going to put your fabric wrong side up into that channel. You're going to make sure it's even on both sides. Then you're going to take this, you're going to slip it in until it clicks and keep it up. You can see there's quite a bit of space because it's designed so that you can have batting in there too. So this basically works just like a bias tape maker. It's designed for 2.5 inch, not 2 1/4. So there is a little bit of space there as we push that through. And I'm showing you this on the desktop, and then I'll show you how it works on the sewing machine. But I just want you to know how to load it before we're in tighter spaces at my sewing machine. So now you want to keep it like this. Make sure it's folded, and then you're going to push it through this smaller one. And what this is going to do is it's going to help fold it in half. And then you do the same thing. You keep this kind of on top, push until that clicks. So it's a 2-part system. Your sewing machine is going to be here. I'm going to show you how it works. This is going to do this. This is going to do this. You're going to twist it, and you're going to sew along this edge, sewing these together. So it's not pressed. The idea behind it is you just go right to the sewing machine. So we are going to do that. I just wanted to show you how it was set up before I got started. Now I'm zoomed way back because I want to show you how I have my sewing machine set up. So my sewing machine basically stops here, and then I have this table that extends the space in front of my presser foot and my sewing. And the reason I'm showing you that is it's really, really helpful when you're using this, because then you have space to pull this back and still feed that through. I don't know that you'd really have enough space if you were just in the front of your sewing machine. So if you don't have a table like this, get creative. Put some books or something that will even up and give you a little bit more even space for feeding all of this when making the ties. I put pink top thread and bobbin thread into my sewing machine. And then I'm going to use a leader fabric, which is just a little scrap piece of fabric. I'm going to start sewing on that. So if you get any bird's nests, they're going to be there, not on your project. I'm going to put this in front. So I'm going to get started. And then sometimes this will pop up. You want to make sure everything stays nice and flat under your presser foot. So I use my scissors. My goal is to sew about 1/8 of an inch from this edge. So as I go, I'm just going to be pulling these back and then using my fingers to flip that down and make sure these 2 folds stay lined up. I'm doing my best to keep my fingers out of the way so you can see. And see how it's starting to push up from the foot because I got too close to the edge. Just lift your foot and put it back down if that happens. Have you ever tried one of these tools before? Do you make those jelly roll rugs, or do you use this for something else? Let me know in the comments. It's not something I use a lot, but I really like it for things like this. Then I'm just going to cut that leader fabric off. And I sewed back and forth on this starting end, and I should have stopped a little short here because we need to get this end folded under. And I usually do it right as I come to the end, but I forgot. So we'll just grab the seam ripper. You're not really sewing if you're not using your seam ripper, right? So you want to stop about 2 to 3 inches before the end. Stop sewing. You could leave it in your sewing machine instead of having to use your seam ripper. Then flatten that, fold that first section in, second in, and then back in half so that we have a finished edge on one end. So like I said, you could do that if you remember while you're sewing, but because I didn't, I'm just going to start a few stitches back, and I'm going to hold it down with the scissors so I don't sew my finger. So now we have that. I'm just going to take it to the ironing board and iron that flat. Now you can leave your ties like this, just sewn on the one side. If you prefer the look, you can sew down the other side as well. That's totally personal preference. If you want to do these fast, just sew the one side. If you like the look of both sides, go for it. So here are the 3 ties that we made, and I left these 2 just sewn on one side and then did this one on both sides, just so you can see the difference and decide which way you would want to go when you make your makeup brush holder. I'm going to use the ones that were sewn just on one side. So our next step is to take the lining where we have the fleece on the back, and remember the fleece is butted up to the top. So I'm going to turn it over this way, and this is the top. Now we're going to take our 2 ties and find the raw edges. And I do like to have the seams on the same side when I attach these. Now we're going to measure 8.5 inches down and clip and baste the ties in place. So I stitched about 1/8 of an inch from the edge so that that won't show once we sew this whole thing together. Next, we're going to be putting the outside fabric, the pink, on top of this, but you'll notice these are hanging off the edge. So you just want to fold them back so that they're not going to be in the way when we clip and pin and sew all the way around. Just want to get them kind of flat. Make sure they're not getting over to this edge. You want them to just be in the middle. Now the fleece is here, which means this is going to be the pocket section. So we're going to leave about 4 to 5 inches open here because that will be the least noticeable when we turn and close that if you don't get that sewn over perfectly. Now we're going to put these right sides together, matching all the edges. Now sometimes when you add fusible fleece, the size gets a little bit different. The fabric might shrink up a teeny bit. It is not a big deal because, you know, we're not making clothes. So it's not going to mess up the project, but you want to make sure everything is the same size when you sew it because we are going to use 1/4 inch seams. So what I like to do is just put 4 clips so I know it's held in place and these straps are right, and then I turn it over. Because if anything's going to be smaller, it's going to be this lining. I'm also going to sew around with the fleece side up. I feel like that's less stress on the feed dogs. I don't even know if that's a thing, but I feel like it's a thing. So I'm going to put a double clip where I want to stop because I'm going to leave a hole open here. But before I do that, I'm going to trim this little piece off of the outer fabric so that it is even with that lining. So now we're just going to sew all the way around, leaving a space open here. But if you recall from the beginning, I told you I was going to show you a trick for how to get these corners better than just sewing, turning, and cutting. For that, you just need a couple pieces of thread. So I usually take a thread that is pretty bright, is different from the fabric that I'm using, so it's easy to see, and that I don't use very often. So we're gonna go with this bright yellow. Definitely not a color that I sew with a lot. So I've just cut 4 pieces, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 inches long. And when we're at the sewing machine and we get to a corner, I'm gonna show you how we're going to use those. So I'm starting pretty close to this corner and I'm going to do 1/4 inch seams. So instead of sewing all the way to a 1/4 inch from this edge, I'm going to stop about 1 stitch shy of a 1/4 inch. I'm going to lift my foot and I'm going to take one of the yellow threads and I'm going to just put it in between those 2 pieces of fabric. I'm going to take this clip off too, just so I can get under this a little bit better. I'm going to hold that thread so that I can feel it right up against the needle. And I'm going to put the foot back down I'm going to take 1 stitch. Then I'm going to lift, and I'm going to pivot. Now I'm going to take both ends of the thread. You don't want to pull one or you will undo this whole process. And we're going to tuck it in and make sure that the thread that, see, we can't have that there because we don't want it to get sewn into any other stitches but that one that we just took. Make sure that's tucked nice and tight. And now we're going to keep going to the next corner. It's another step when you're sewing, but it makes the turning and the corners that much better. I think it's worth the time, and you can let me know what you think at the end or when you try it yourself. Now I've gotten back to the 2 clips, which is to remind me that I need to stop sewing close to here to leave space for turning. Now we'll take it and we'll clip those corners, and I will show you the magic with that yellow thread. I forgot to hit record again. Okay, so I clipped the corners, making sure not to go too close to the thread. And now I'm going to turn it right side out and show you the trick with the yellow thread for getting those corners out. All you do is you hold both sides of the thread and you give it a little tug, and look at that. That just comes out so beautifully. And then you're just going to pull one end, and you can use that thread again if you want to. And you're just going to do that to all 4 corners. It is so much easier than taking a turning tool and making your way in there, and it's going to give you a much sharper corner. This is my new favorite way to do it. Like I said, it takes a little bit longer at the sewing machine, but look at the result you get and how quick and easy that is. So you're spending your time one place or the other. Now I'm just going to take that to the ironing board, iron that flat, and iron the portion that we used to turn under. Now I'm just going to sew all the way around the edge, about 1/8 of an inch, just to keep everything in place. And because I'm starting inside the fabric and not off of the fabric, I can't use a leader fabric. So I'm going to raise the bobbin thread. You put your foot down, hold that top thread, needle down, needle up, give a little tug, and that pulls the bobbin thread through the fabric. Then I take tweezers, pull that up, put both under the foot and pull back, and now I'm going to go forward and back a few stitches while holding those threads. That is going to prevent bird's nests or big old knots from having one of the threads sucked back down as you get started. So then once you take a few stitches, you can just let go of that. Now if you're turning a corner and it's kind of thick like this one is where the fleece is, this is what I do to help my feed dogs along. I have some of these pieces of fabric. I made a tube and then I folded it in half. And then I'll just take however many of them I need to balance out the height of the project. So this one looks good. And then I'll put that under my foot. So it just gives the foot and the feed dogs more to work with so it doesn't get hung up on that corner. Now it's time to make the pocket. So you're going to put your lining side up so I can feel the fleece. There's no fleece down here. We're going to be folding this up and then doing stitch lines to form these pockets. You can do the pocket between like 4.5 to 5 inches high. If you know what brushes you're going to be putting in them, you can use them to decide how tall you want these pockets to be. I like to have things sticking out. So I want to make sure that my smallest item is still going to show above the top edge of the pocket. So this is going to work really well for this. So if you want to, you can measure on each side, but you can just as easily fold it up, and if these edges are lined up, then you have it straight. And then you're going to press. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to sew the pocket up. So I'm just going to sew right along the stitch lines that we already have from the top, and we're going to double over down to here. Then I'm going to show you how to figure out where each of these stitch lines go. Now what I like to do is start from the center and work my way out. And the reason is because every once in a while, somebody's seam will be a little bit different. Where you sew this on will be a little bit different. So if you start from one side, you may end up with something too big on one side or a little bit too small. If you start from the center, everything is going to be even. And however big these 2 outside pockets will be is what they will be. We're going to get 12 different sections into this makeup holder. So the first step, obviously, is to find the center if we're going to start from the center. I'm just going to put a little clip there so I know where that center point is. Now, the way I have designed this is, and the way that's in the pattern that you can get on Etsy, is I put 2 fatter slots in the center instead of on the end. Some people do it on the end. I like them in the center, and I'm going to make them 1 3/4 inches wide each. So we'll do a center line and then 1 3/4 inch to either side. then a 1 1/4, and then 3 1-inch, and then this one is going to probably be about 1.5 inches. It'll be what it'll be. I always like to start sewing from the folded edge and then ending by doubling back over this top part. You can either draw lines where you want them with a pencil, a chalk line, a heat erasable pen. I like to use the seam guide that comes with your sewing machine. So what you do is you put it, look in your manual because yours might work a little bit differently, but usually it goes through the foot somehow. And see, you can make it be any distance you want. We're going to be using these little folded up things, put it under the foot just to help everything move well. And I'm going to be pulling up the bobbin thread each time. You want to make sure this first line is straight because we are going to use it for every other line from there. So you can just use something on the side of your sewing machine, or you can draw that first line. Okay, because I said I want to start off this end and I want to use this guide, I put it on the wrong side. So let's take it out and reposition it. So usually they show you to do it this way so that this is curved like that, but you can also put it through from the opposite direction. I'm going to use my ruler. And so instead of this kind of being curved on whatever you want to sew off of, it's going to come down, but it will work just the same. So we're going to put this so that it goes right over that stitch line that we just made. And we're going to start the next one. And you're just going to keep doing this until you have all 12 slots done. So let me know in the comments who you might make this for. Are you going to make it for yourself? Are you going to make it as a gift? Are you going to make these to sew and sell? I would love to know. So now that we have that side done, we are going to put this on the other side and we're going to sew these. There are lots of fun ways you could personalize this. If you have a Cricut or other cutting machine, you could put cute makeup, like wake up and makeup sayings on the inside or the outside with the heat transfer vinyl. You could machine embroider. You could hand embroider something. So many ways to go. Let me know if you're just going to keep it simple or if you're going to make it a little extra special. I really like using this sewing machine guide. It's easy, you don't have to draw anything. If you were doing a lot of these, you just keep going. You haven't put anything on the fabric, so there's nothing to get off. So now we have our 12 slots. Let's see what our sides look like. So this is about 1.5. That one's just under 1.5, closer to 1 1/4. So it's good that we started from the center and worked out. Now it is time to add the brushes and roll it up. Now it is all set. And while I'm sure my daughter-in-law would love to get these brushes in the brush box, I think it's going to be way better inside her own roll-up in her favorite color. I'm actually going to wrap it with the box so she knows they're new, not that you can't tell, but just in case. So I'm going to put these in here, and then she has room for lots of other things. So the way that this was designed, as far as where these ties are, it's designed so that you fold the flap down just to meet the top of the pocket. So kind of like that. And then you're just going to roll it. Since I don't have anything on that end, I'm just going to fold it like that. Start rolling where my brushes are and tie it in a bow. So what do you think? I mean, you can make this case and just give it to someone assuming they have everything they need, or you can add some of the supplies, maybe new brushes or like makeup pencils or new mascara. This is the perfect gift for the holidays, for birthdays, etc., for teens. This could also be a cool item to sew and sell. So let me know what you're gonna do. I'm super excited for the holidays to give this to my daughter-in-law, and hopefully she hasn't watched this video, so she won't already know what it is. Today's video is going to the dogs. Dog bandanas in particular that fit right over their collar. We are going to make these out of simple squares of fabric. This is one of my most viewed videos on YouTube, but I've gotten a little feedback that it moves a little too quickly. So today I'm going to talk you through it, and I'm going to show you and explain the different size squares that you need for small, medium, or large dog collars. I took the small collar out of the one that I had already made and showed you, just so you can have a visual of the 3 sizes. And we're mostly looking at the widths, not the color, nothing else. So let's talk about the squares that we need for each of these. We will start with the small, which is this one. You're going to start with an 8-inch square. So that's pretty easy to find out of scrap fabric. Then you're going to turn it on its side so it's a diamond. And I like to line it up on my grid just to make sure that I have everything straight. So these 2 points will become this bottom point of the bandana, and these two are going to be folded, cut, and sewn to make the channel for the collar. So for the 8-inch square, we are going to fold the sides in 1 3/4 inches. So what I like to do is take my handy dandy heat erasable pen and take a ruler. And the reason I get my square lined up on this grid is so that if I line my ruler up on the grid, I know I will be drawing straight on the corners of this fabric. So I have it lined up to 1 3/4. I'm going to draw a line. And I know that's dark, but it doesn't matter because once we hit it with an iron, it will disappear. We're going to do this on both sides. So we have the first one marked. We're going to be folding that under. Now let's take the second one. The medium size, you need a 10 by 10 fabric, which is perfect because if you like buying these stackers, I mean, look at how many bandanas we could make out of this stacker of all 10. So I'm going to do this one, these little flowers. But I do want to show you one thing to consider if you are using stackers. This is directional this way, but when we turn it this way and fold it, and it becomes the bandana, it just doesn't look good because everything's sideways. It's not going this way. So don't use a directional fabric if it's already pre-cut into a stacker. Now, if you want to use the directional fabric, you can always cut it, but just make sure you cut it so that the direction is going this way. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, that's going to save me some time. I don't have to cut the 10-inch. I just have to line it up on my grid. And then for this one, we are going to fold the sides in 2 inches. So I'm just going to put my ruler 2 inches in, draw my line. And this one has to go in a little bit more because this collar is wider than this one. So we're going to be needing a wider channel. So we have the small one marked, the medium one marked. And now we need the large one. So the large dog bandana needs a 12 by 12 square. That's for this one. And again, we're just going to do the same thing. I'm going to line it up on my mat. And this one we're going to fold in 2.5 inches. The side we're going to mark, line it up on a grid so that it's easier to just double check 1, 2.5, because you're using your ruler, and I'm also using the grid to make sure I'm drawing these lines in the correct place. Okay, large, medium, small. Let's grab the iron. So we're going to iron and fold on all of these lines that we just drew, and the lines are going to disappear when the heat hits them. So you want to make sure that you fold that over and kind of finger press it right on that line. Because once we hit it with heat, the line will be no more and you will not know where it was. Of course, you can always remeasure, being a little more dramatic than I need to be. Just do that. And then if you have a quilter's clapper or tailor's clapper and you want to use it, you're just going to iron and then just press that down. It absorbs the heat. It absorbs any steam if you're using steam in your iron. And my favorite part is it makes the fabric not so hot, so you're not burning your fingers. So we're going to do this fold on all 3 of these bandanas. Triangles are folded in for all 3 sizes to make the channel on our dog bandana. So I'm going to move the ironing board for a minute and we are going to trim again. Now this is where sometimes people think I do it a little weird, but I'm going to give you the reason why. I like to make the marks from the points and press it in once first before trimming, because what we're going to do is we're going to fold this and fold this to this line so that we can sew just like this. So you'll see that's folded and folded so we have no raw edges. You can be more exact if you already have that crease set. I'm going to line that crease up on a grid line so that it's easy to see where that 1/2 inch actually is. So fold on the crease line, open it up. You might notice I have quite a few sizes of rulers, and it isn't necessary. If you're a beginning sewer, you can get 1 ruler and you will be good to go. If you do that, let's see, if you're just starting out, I would get a ruler like this. This is 24.5 inches, something big that will be straight all the way across fabric if you buy it by the yard, because you can always work with that with anything, but I'm going to show you here. So just when you're doing smaller things, it's a little bit more, oh, my fabric moved. It's a little bit more cumbersome to move around when you're cutting smaller pieces. That's why I'll usually grab a smaller ruler, but this works just fine. You can always add more ruler sizes as you continue with your craft. Or not, totally up to you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to fold that into the crease, and I'm going to finger press it, which basically means just press down with your fingers to kind of get it to stay. And then I'm going to fold it again to where we had ironed that fold. Adjust if necessary, then press that. So that is creating the channel, this part, for our dog bandana. So I'm going to do that on each side of each bandana. And if you want to put a pin or clip on there, you can. Usually don't bother with that. We're going to be sewing the part we just folded down so that it's not going to pop up as you put your collar through the channel. And since we're going to be sewing from the back side of the fabric, and you don't want a big old bird's nest knot here by mistake, I'm going to show you how to pull up the bobbin thread. It's one of my favorite tricks, so you might have seen this before. You're going to hold the top thread, and then you're going to put the foot down, put the needle down, lift the needle back up, and give it a little tug. That gets the bobbin thread up to the top, so you can be holding both. Then you're going to put them under the foot. Now let me try and do it this way. And then my machine does have an automatic knotter, so I'm just going to do a knot. And I'm holding these 2 strings tight while I do that so that they can't get sucked back down and create that bird's nest. Now, if your machine doesn't knot on its own, you're going to go forward 2 or 3 stitches and then backward 2 or 3 stitches. Now I'm just going to do this for the rest of those pieces that we folded on all 3. Now, because I'm doing a few, I can chain stitch them just like you would for quilt blocks if you're a quilter at all, which basically means I'm not going to lift it and then have to pull the bobbin thread up every time. I'm just going to feed my second dog bandana along, and then I'll just cut them apart at the end. That can be a real time and thread saver. So if you've never done this before, this is what it's going to look like. You basically have a very small amount of thread right here in between. I'm just going to snip that, leave this one on, and then I'm just going to turn this around and do the other side of all 3. Back to the ironing board. We have all of the channels stitched. So now what we need to do is we need to fold them right sides together, match the points, and match the ends of the channels. And we're just going to press this top edge real quickly on all 3. And the next thing is we're going to sew here to here. So I am just going to put a couple little clips just to make sure the fabric stays lined up. You can use pins as well, but to me this is the perfect kind of project to use clips because it doesn't have to be super, super precise, and the clips are going to hold it together just fine. So even though I'm doing 3 because I'm showing you the 3 different sizes, this does give you an idea of efficiencies that you can use if you're making more than one of any specific project. If you group what you're doing, like do all of this pressing, do all of this sewing, do all of this, for all the ones that you're doing, you're going to be saving time. You can also do that chain stitching like I showed you, save some thread, save some time not pulling bobbin threads up 6 times. You just did it once. All right, back to the sewing machine. Now we're just going to be sewing down this side and up this side, basically from channel to channel with a 1/4 inch seam. And we're going to come down to this point and we're going to pivot. Now I just want to give you a little tip. If you're new to sewing or you're teaching kids to sew, this can be really helpful. You can take a ruler, because we're going to be turning down here, right? And so you can take a ruler and make a little mark, a 1/4 inch from that edge. And then you can do the same thing on this side. And then you or they won't have to pay as much attention to where you are based on the foot or the markings on your sewing machine. You can just go to that point, pivot, and move. And it's going to be a really big confidence booster for beginning sewists. Even though my machine does have the automatic knot, I'm going to go back and forth on both ends because we're going to have to turn this through this pretty small channel, especially on this small one. And it's going to put a little bit of strain on that seam. So I like to reinforce it by going back and forth. So you'll notice my needle is at that mark, or almost, let's see. Yeah, it's like a hair before it. Now it's a hair after. And these markings on my 1/4 inch foot are at the edge of the fabric. So that, if I don't mark it, that is how I know that it's time to lift my presser foot and pivot to do a 1/4 inch on the opposite side. And just like with the last one, we can chain piece these. So I just overlap it where I can, make sure this is going to be lined up with the edge of my 1/4 inch foot, and just move forward. We're in the home stretch. The next thing we need to do is we need to clip our corners. You can either clip it straight across like that, but keep it a little away from the stitching. You do not want to cut the stitching. Or, and I prefer this way, especially with a point like that, is you can come in and take a little bit more off on each side. Because then there's less fabric that has to go in here and it's going to turn to make a better point. And you can just do it from the beginning. You don't have to go straight across first. I just wanted to show you the 2 ways to go. Now you'll see I didn't get right on that line, but it's fine. For a project like this, no one's going to know that it should have been a little bit over. Now, if this was a quilt block, that would have been a problem, but it's not, so we are good to go. Next step, we're going to turn these right side out through the channel. So you need to get the 2 channels turned out, and then we also need to get this point. And I always do it with my finger first, but that's not a very good point, is it? So I'm going to use this turning tool, which is designed to help get these points out. It's not too pointy. You still want to be careful. You could also use a chopstick or something else that isn't going to mark your fabric. But no matter what you use, make sure you are gentle as you massage that point, because if you go too hard, you could end up with this popping through, and then there will be sadness. Now we are going to iron this, and I'm going to make sure that that seam is on the edge so that it's nice and even on both sides. Now we're going to do the other 2. And when I'm getting these seams straight, I just kind of roll it a little bit to massage it to where I want it to be. And for these bigger ones, I'll do one side at a time because it's harder to get both of these sides to stay. So all 3 of these are pressed. You could just put the collar through without sewing the channel line. So you could leave it like that versus this, so you wouldn't have a stitch line, but you can also make the stitch line match the fabric so it won't really show. But I feel like doing this extra step keeps the bandana in place a little bit better, so I always do it, but it's totally up to you. If you like this look without another stitch line on there, try it and see how you like it. You can always come back and add it later if you decide that you're like me and you're like, yeah, you know what, she was right. I want to put that in there. So what we're going to do is grab our pen again, and I'm just going to draw a line that is parallel to this top fold and just about at the end of our channel. The main thing to do is you want to make sure there's enough space for this hook to go through. So even if we moved it up a little bit, it would be getting a bit tight because this has a little thickness to it too. So that is why we made these channels these specific sizes. Okay, 3 more lines to sew. Back to the sewing machine. So let me know how you would use these. Are you going to make seasonal bandanas for your own dogs? A lot of groomers will make quick bandanas for when they groom a dog, they send them home all fancy in a new bandana. This is also a great thing to sew and sell. This is very basic, very fast way to make them. Anyway, let me know in the comments who you're going to make these for, what size you think you'll do, and happy sewing. So what do you think? Are some of these going to help you check everyone off your list? Leave a comment. Let me know which ones you're going to be making and for whom. And again, have a very, very Merry Christmas.